Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to a Coffee with Karen, cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So each week, a guest will discuss whatever topic they want to discuss, either from a mental, a physical, or spiritual perspective, or quite often it tends to be a combination of all three. So my next guest is Jacqueline. She lives in Nottingham. That's up north in England, if anybody is listening from abroad. And she's been described as a sparkling soul who lights up a room. Okay, she's always looking thoughtful with pen in hand. So when she's not writing, Jacqueline is a creative soul. She loves spending time with her soulmate, Bruce. Oh, she's singing, dancing, or just being silly, and loves family time too. Love that. Jacqueline has dedicated a lot of her time to personal development and is now just simply reaping the reward. So her mission is to help others realise that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Whatever challenges they're facing. So, thank you for being here, Jacqueline. So, if you could share with the listeners a little bit more insight into you, what you do, and a little bit more of your story.
With absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Goodness me, where do I start? So my mission ultimately is to help more women, primarily in the prime of their life, sort of 40s, 50s, that kind of age where they've got that hit that crossroads and they actually don't really know what they want from life or what the point of anything is. And I have been on a very long, lengthy, in-depth discovery journey of my own for the last few years, and I'm really coming alive now after doing all the work. My new mantra, am I allowed to swear a little tiny bit?
Yeah,
that's cool. That's good. My new mantra is do the bloody work. So this is what I want people to remember. You don't get something for nothing. You have to put something in to get something back. And I share this in many different ways. I love a podcast interview and YouTube interview and all of those kind of things. I have published 2 of my own books. I have co-authored a third, which is an inspirational, uplifting book by 14 incredible women called The Girls Who Refuse to Quit. I am coaching women in their midlife who are typically just looking for something more and helping them to work out how to find that, what it looks like, and how the hell to actually, what it is they need to do to get there. Figuring out where that is and all of that good stuff. So.
Right. Fantastic. So for you, would you say this is coming about even more so in the last couple of years because of what's been going on globally, or maybe not just women, but obviously you tend to be dealing with women. Have you noticed a real change that women have, are questioning, are they on the right path? Are they following their purpose? Have you noticed a change in the last 2 years?
Definitely think so many people have had that time, whether they've either had the time to pause and reflect and think, yeah, this ain't it for me. Or maybe they haven't had the time and they've thought, there's got to be more to it than this. It's time to change it up a bit. So interestingly enough, for me, I actually did the pivot. It's that key word, isn't it? Last year. And I actually made the decision to put my previous business to bed and really knuckle down and start helping these women, because I was in a business that I just felt stuck in. I was working in the wedding industry. I wasn't really enjoying it, even though I was like planning my own wedding and sharing that journey with the brides I was working with. I was feeling really quite trapped by my business. And it was horrible. It was a horrible place to be. I felt like this is what I do because this is what people expect me to be doing. And I don't want to. I don't want to be doing this anymore. There's so much more that I feel like I have to share and to give and to do in the world. And 2020 for me was it. That was the year to go, right, it's okay now. I feel like I have permission to put you to bed and say no more and really figure all this stuff out. So that's what I did. And that's why I can understand how so many people come to that place, whether they've come to that crossroads because they've made a change and maybe they're at the end of a relationship, or maybe their children, they might have flown the nest. They're perhaps getting to that point where they're thinking, actually, now it's my time, but I don't even know what I'm going to do with it. Or perhaps they've had that crossroads in their career where they're like, it's time to do something different, and I need to figure out what I want for me rather than worrying about everybody else all the time.
Right. And I can see how it comes about, because it's interesting, isn't it? We've possibly, a lot of us, been brought up to believe or taught that, this is how we do things. You go and get a job, you're aiming for a career long term, and then you might fall out of that because you have children and things change, rather than accepting that maybe, that should be perfectly normal, shouldn't it? There are different parts of our life where we put on a different hat and take on that role. And actually it sounds quite logical, doesn't it, that as the children are getting older and more independent, and then women can start looking back at, okay, so what next? What now? What do I want from this part? Because there's nothing wrong in that. Why have we been taught or conditioned to think otherwise?
It's fascinating, really, because I think what happens is you end up on this kind of like a treadmill, and you're just going and going and going and going and going and going until you either stop. You're either forced to stop, and that might be because you're not well enough to keep going because you've been constantly on the go, on the go, on the go, or you just have this sense of knowing that you don't really want to get to your 60s or something and look back and think, oh, that was a load of crap. Let me actually get to that and think, I rocked it. That was just awesome. But because you're so caught up in the right here, right now of everything that needs to be done, the to-do lists, all the things that you're on with constantly, you don't have time to think. You don't have time to think about what you want or what you need or what would even feel good for you.
And do you find that, again, I think you said this earlier about what we think we should be doing. So there's this sort of something that's expected of us, or we perceive that we should be doing X, Y, Z, rather than given a chance to actually even dare to dream, right?
Exactly that. Because a lot of people walk around with this story in their head of what they should be doing, what they think is expected of them, what they feel like other people are looking at them and seeing them for, when actually what they're doing in their world isn't really or shouldn't really be about anybody else but them. Because ultimately it is their life and their being and their sense of accomplishment, and they forget what that actually looks like because they've got so almost not drowned but surrounded by all of these other things that they can't see the wood for the trees. So they don't know what the way forward looks like. They don't want to keep going from where they've come from because that's not working. And what on earth are they supposed to do next?
And it's that whole thing about again, we're sort of almost conditioned to think that we shouldn't be thinking about just ourselves because that's selfish, as though being selfish is a negative thing, when actually, is it? No, it's not. Shouldn't we all be doing what we want to be doing?
And that's what I'm kind of up against, if you like, is educating and encouraging these women that it is okay to do that. It is okay to think about your needs and what you want. And I am, hand on heart, living proof that that can change your whole world. Because 5 years ago, so August 2016, I was drowning. That was me. I was at the very last days really of my marriage, having put in almost, well, more than everything, given it my all, and trying to support my 2 sons that lived at home who weren't even allowed to be in a room together. I was constantly, my head, my attention, my energy was everywhere, and I was just done. And thankfully, I found the person who gave me the advice and said, if you put yourself and your needs further up the list, everything else will fall into place. And I laughed. I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't see that could possibly be a thing. How on earth could I help my sons by sorting myself out? But I thought, you know what? I paid this woman to help me. I'm just going to do what she says. For once, I just need to do what I've been told to do and not push against it or think, nah, they're wrong. Carry on with this because, you know, it was so great at the time. Not. And thank God I did. I did the bloody work. So that was the August, and I got to work on my beliefs, what I believed I was worthy of, what I believed I wanted, what I really felt I wanted my world to start looking like. And I did the affirmations, and I did the meditations, and I did the belief, like the visualization stuff. And it took 2 months. 2 months, and my life had completely changed.
Wow.
So my marriage just stopped. It just ended. And that, quite honestly, was exactly what I needed. It wasn't working. It had been quite abusive, quite toxic. There'd been a lot of manipulation, and I was just done. And thankfully, I accepted in that moment that that was what was supposed to happen, instead of again pushing against it and saying, no, it'll be all right. Just stopped. And over time, and obviously it took a little bit longer, things with my lads at home started to settle. Things got a bit easier. I managed to find a bit of breathing space, come up for air, actually, because that was what I needed. And from then on, it was an absolute game changer. I can't even really put into words. I mean, I was euphoric. For that first few weeks, I couldn't believe that my life had changed, to me, beyond recognition. I just was looking at a totally different future than the one that I thought I was going to be stuck with forever, which was just frankly hideous. It really was. And I was just so relieved to be free.
And you said earlier about doing the work. Mm-hmm. So I suppose my question is, initially, for you to find yourself in that position, which, I mean, okay, you say that the relationship come to an end, but nothing really had changed. No. Because you said you were still, it wasn't going right. So that was the sort of natural end to it. But would you say then the work that you did was all internal work?
Absolutely. And I can still picture the look on my now ex-husband's face when I said, oh, I've been working with this woman and she says I should think about myself and focus on what I want. And it was like a light bulb went on in his head, and he thought, oh, I'm going to be out the door. He knew. I wasn't even looking at that. I was just believing that what was going to happen from that point onwards was the best thing, no matter what it was. I didn't have an end goal of, I'm going to end my marriage, I'm going to do this. I didn't have all this list of like things I was looking for. It was just a knowing and a feeling and a belief that finally I was going to come to a place that I could be at peace with.
Right. And you said also in there find quite interesting, because I find this a lot when I'm speaking to women, is the fact that this whole thing around I'm not worthy or I don't deserve something. Where do you think all this comes from? Because it seems to be a very common trait. And again, because like you, it's not that I specifically only work with women, but in general, I tend to attract working with women. So, and it is something that comes up so much, there is some kind of, whether it's conscious or not, sometimes it's not conscious, of that they truly do not believe that they are worthy or that they deserve it. So what are your thoughts around it? Why do you think or do you even think, is it a common thought process for a lot of women? And if so, where do you think this stems from?
From what I've seen, there's often some kind of underlying something that's either happened to them or is part of their history that means that they don't understand really that they are worth anything. So I've understood a lot more about this recently in coming to the understanding that my relationship with my sibling has actually been a very difficult one, and I never really was made to feel like I was heard. And that developed into then just talking to anyone who would listen. And my first partner that I was with for 11 years before my husband, that was a difficult relationship too, but I just didn't think that anyone else would be interested. And that was from a very young age. I just had this thing of, oh, well, I would go to somebody because they wanted me, not because I necessarily made that choice myself. And it just goes from there. It kind of just carries on. And so I went from that relationship into then a much more, as I've said, manipulative, toxic, difficult, life-changing. I almost lost my life because of that second relationship.
Wow.
At one point, I found myself pinned to the wall by my throat, and I still had myself believing that it was me. And so there was a lot of work to do.
Right.
An awful lot. Yeah.
But the point is, like you just said, you do the work and it can change. So it's not a permanent fixture.
Never.
And so once women can realise that it's not a permanent fixture, and there are things and there are tools to use and to help, and there you go, you're an inspiration then to many, and living proof that it can change. So again, is it common that, I suppose it's natural then maybe our focus can then be on the children. And so do you find that it is normally women that are getting older, as in their children tends to be, as their children get more independent, because their focus may be not quite so much on them anymore, and that's when they're finally aware that maybe not quite where they should be or would really, really want to be. So this is the time for healing and for change.
Definitely.
But what was the trigger for you? What was the real trigger for you? You say this sort of all happened about 5 years ago. What do you know what triggered you to actually go and seek out this woman that was going to help you, or was she a coach, or how did that come about?
Yeah, she had been, I just feel like she had been sent to me. So I was in a coaching program for my business, which was my wedding business. And part of it was this, the coach that ran this program introduced us to other coaches and different ways of looking at things that could help us with our business. So she is primarily, the lady that I worked with is a law of attraction coach. That's what she does. She's all about energy. And I'd never even heard, well, I had heard of it. Tell a lie. I had listened to The Secret on Audible or something and, was aware of it, but didn't really pay a lot of attention to it because just thought it was not for me. I didn't understand that thing. You know how it is. I just liked the way that she showed up, and she is, and very real. In fact, she's actually coming to my wedding next month. So that's like, we're still in contact and everything. It's
Wow,
incredible.
congratulations.
Thank you. And there was just something that made me think there's got to be something more. And so when we started working and she said, tell me about your life today, I couldn't even find words. It was so complicated. I felt so stuck. I felt so like no one could possibly ever help me or know what I was going through or understand what I could possibly do, because I felt I was up against it with my husband, because I felt like I've committed to try and make this thing work. So therefore, that's what I do. My kids, I was like, they have nowhere else to go. It's not like either of them, can go and live with their dads or anything like that. That's not a thing. How the hell am I supposed to do all this? In the meantime, I'm trying to run my business. And, as we talked, she just said, what makes you think that things aren't going to change? And I said, well, have you just not been listening to what I just said to you? And I could still see myself sat there going, I'm sure she doesn't really know what she's talking about, but I just feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it was just that moment where it was, as I said, I'd paid to work with her, so I needed to do what she was telling me to do, because otherwise it was a complete waste of time and money. And what option did I have? I felt like I'd already run out of options. And it was literally a couple of months of, and I've still got one of them in my bathroom cabinet now, the little belief notes of, what I'm worthy of. This is the lovely person that I am. This is why people love me. All of those kind of things, and kept, had reminders on my phone like 5 times a day. Did that belief work? Did that stuff around proper focusing on me and not thinking, but how is this going to affect everybody else? And that's where you just have to stop doing that. You have to stop worrying about everybody else, even if it's just for a few minutes a day while you're doing this work. At least, that's a start, isn't it? And I couldn't explain what I was trying to do to anybody, and I didn't really think it was their business anyway, because nobody really grasped where I was sort of sitting in my whole relationship thing, because it just, I say, the whole thing just felt like such a complete mess. It really was.
Wow. I mean, the secret, I have to say, I do think it's misunderstood. So I was given, it's interesting you mention that, because I was given, I can't even think how many years I'm going back. My youngest is 17, so she was born in the Algarve, and it was while we were there. So just after she was born. So I go back 17 years now.
Yeah.
And so The Secret had just been come out, the original version. And Bob Proctor was a coach that I'd been following for many years. And one of his coaches rang up, and I, at that time, could not afford the coaching program. But I said I'd pre-ordered The Secret. He said, there is so much depth to that film. He said, watch it twice a day for a month. And I thought, you are crazy. Like, who watches, out my favourite film, I'm a Star Wars fan. I have not watched Star Wars 60 times. But again, like you said earlier about when you do something, I thought, well, I'm where I'm at. This guy is where he's at. Maybe, just maybe, I should actually listen to him and take action on that. So I did. And I have to say that's possibly the best piece of advice I was ever given, because people do underestimate the whole law of attraction thing. They just think, all right, I've just got to envision it. And like you said, no, there's work to be done, even if it's just internal work, because you do the internal work. And guess what? You will then take action in the right way. But it has to come from here first, and you getting in the right feeling place.
Yeah.
Because again, people totally misunderstand that whole thing. That whole, you can say your gratitude list, and then you can feel your gratitude list. And the whole point is actually to get into that feeling place. So is that what you're sort of talking about when you say you were doing when you say you've got to get, I mean, obviously you've got to do the physical actions,
Yeah.
but initially has got to come the internal work, right?
It's connecting with it. It's connecting with the energy of what it feels like to already just feel better, what it feels like to feel present, what it feels like to actually enjoy something again. Because it can be as much as that. It can actually be that you forget how to enjoy the simplest things that used to make you smile, that used to make you feel good, and just raise your vibration that little bit. And that's another thing that, it becomes one of those things people are like, do you what now? But, that's what it's about. It's just, you have to be in that space where you're ready to receive something that's going to pick you up, and then you kind of just keep raising yourself that little bit more each time. And it doesn't always work quite like that. It doesn't always work straight away. It's not always something, it's not an overnight, oh yay, my life is fixed.
No, exactly. And that's where it is, isn't it? People were we live in such an instant gratification society. Everyone wants it now.
Yeah.
And really, what you've just said right from the start, you've got to do the work.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen overnight. I would like to meet somebody that said it hope happen. It's just the same old, it takes 10 years to have overnight success. There's no such thing.
Absolutely.
You've got to do the work consistently to raise your vibration. But if you do it.
And I think the other thing is not getting caught up in that worrying if you're doing it right. At least you're having a go. At least to start with, at least you're trying something different, because that's another thing that I talk about a lot, is not just keep choosing the same things over and over again and then wonder why everything is the same. What? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
and we've all done it, right? We've all done it.
Absolutely. But it's like you go somewhere, you keep going left, you end up at the same place. So if you make a choice and you keep making that choice, you end up in the same place.
Yeah.
And
but do you find that that is the biggest hurdle, the actual check? Because people might want the end result,
they don't know what that looks like.
When they realise something has to change, they can actually be just resistant in itself, the change.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, this is why one of the things I say is, even if you're making a choice that is just a fraction different to what you'd normally do, just think of all the possibilities that could come from that little one tiny thing that you're doing ever so slightly differently. Whether it's just a little change in your routine, going somewhere at a different time of day, meeting a different person than you normally would do on a Tuesday afternoon or whatever. Any of those things can lead to so many more opportunities that you don't even understand until you experience just that little shift of something else. And it doesn't, sometimes you might think, well, that's not what I expected. That's fine. That's okay. Just go for it and embrace the difference. Embrace that space of being in a new situation or seeing a new perspective. Just be in that place.
So really, you're telling people to embrace change, to just step up, be present, do something different, and go with the flow. So when you talk about, so you deal with, well, I certainly am in that category. The big 5-0 is looming.
Oh, you don't look at it.
There you go. So this is, do I have to accept that this is midlife? No, I don't like that. So what can we do to better support our outlook, I suppose, during this trying time that we call midlife?
So the first thing I would say is just give yourselves a bloody pat on the back to start with, because you've already got this far and you've already survived 100% of whatever those days look like. You're still here. you need to just, for a moment, really think about what it is that you want. You can start with like a little wish list. I would enjoy this, more of this in my world. Because until you understand what it is that makes you feel like you, because quite often it's that we lose that connection with, I don't even feel like me anymore. And if you can't identify what it is that does help you to feel like you, then you're not going to really know where those choices might start. So it's one of the things I love to do is journaling. So you just kind of get everything out your head, write it down, either make it like a shopping list or just write down your thoughts and be like, think about what you did when you were younger that you used to enjoy. Because quite often we find ourselves coming back to that. And it's because when you're younger, you don't have that filter of all the things in life that are put on you as you grow. So one of my examples is the writing. That was my decision. I had that moment where I thought, I've got to do what I need, that I loved to do when I was younger. And that's right, I'm going to write a book. And as if by magic, there it is.
So for the listeners, what's the book called?
So my first book, my memoirs, this is Onward and Upward. And it is a real life roller coaster journey. It really is. It's in my maiden name. I'm due to get married, so I'm already using my married name for my business just to save complication later. This one has my maiden name, which is Jacqueline Rogerson. It's got some amazing 5-star reviews on Amazon. And it really does tell the story of a girl who just kept going until eventually she found her happy place, how that happened, and some of the things that happened along the way. So that was when I decided I'm going to do what feels like something that really does come so naturally to me. And it was to write my book. And so that happened in 2018. And that's why I always come back to that. Something else that I do that I find actually very enjoyable for people of our age group is I'm a member of Tuneless Choir, where we sing like no one listens. And that's actually something that I've been more involved with in my work as well recently. But it's so good because what it does is it lifts you up. You sing purely because you're enjoying it, and it doesn't matter what you sound like. You can just belt out your favourite tunes like nobody's listening, and it just makes you feel so good.
And what is singing? What is sound? Is vibration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So your favourite songs are going to be. It's all about raising your vibration.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good. So you found a few things to focus on for exactly doing that. So following your passion, your purpose. So writing for you was yours, singing for you was yours. So how can we recognize the signs that show us that it is time for either a reframe or a change in direction?
So there might just be a moment where you think, I don't want this anymore, or this doesn't feel good. And it has you kind of stopping and thinking, okay, so that's awkward. It might be awkward because it could be, a working relationship, a friendship. It could be something like that you just feel like this isn't serving me anymore. And it's quite often at that point when you realize that you need a change that other things come along and kind of take their place. So universe kind of juggles some stuff around a little bit for you and says, okay, this isn't what you want, so how about this? And you really just have to be present in noticing that these things are happening, like they're signs. You get sent signs from the universe, and it might be something comes up a lot on a news feed, even when you're on social media, and you think, well, what is this? I didn't know anything about this. And all of a sudden, it's like everywhere I keep finding this thing that it's saying, you should do this, you should try this. Or it might be a song. I remember one of my lovely friends who's a Kundalini yoga teacher. And she had this thing about, she kept hearing open your heart on the radio. So that was her sign that what she needed to be doing was working more with, the kind of things that you get involved with when you're doing Kundalini, and it's all about opening your heart space and all of that amazing stuff. Personally, I don't do it, so I don't quite know what I'm talking about, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. And I've always remembered her talking about that. It kept coming up, like every time she put the radio on, this song was playing, and it was just like, you feel like someone's trying to tell you something. So just listen and think for a minute, well, what might happen if I do that thing? Instead of worrying about all the things that aren't happening because you're not doing the things you've stopped doing, just start imagining the possibilities. Possibilities are, infinite, actually. There are always so many different things that could happen as a result of making one decision in a slightly different way than you would have.
Right. And as you said right just there about, what was the word you used? Just about being present and sort of just being open to it, because at the end of the day, we spend the majority of our time on autopilot. And if we are not in a particularly high vibration, we will just go about our lives really not paying much attention.
And playing it safe.
Something like that is saying, right, be aware, be ready so that you'll notice something that's going to come your way. So being, I suppose, conscious rather than unconscious, because unconscious means we'll only keep doing the same things that we have been doing, that are, a little subconscious voice is keeping us safe in its idea. Whereas, so what you're trying to tell people is to just be open and eyes wide open to see what is coming your way,
and keep listening. Keep listening to those messages. So when I met my fiance that I'm marrying in just under 6 weeks, which was just over 4 years ago, this was after I've been doing all this bloody work.
Funny that though.
Yeah. And what actually happened was I was actually in a place where I completely was open to whatever's meant to happen is going to happen. So that was that. And in my mind, what that looked like was fool around for a little bit, have a bit of fun, just chill out for a while and don't take anything too seriously. Then what happened was I'd had a couple of little flirtations and various other things. And all of a sudden, there he was. And I was like, oh, it's you. And I knew, and he knew. But I've never forgotten. I had this moment of I could do this and carry on doing the flirting thing with people and whatever. Or I could go that way. What might that look like? And I just had this. There was like a little voice that said, you have no idea what that might be. Just go for it. And I thought, right, I'm putting down that idea and I'm going to see where this takes me. And it just blew me away. Our connection from day one was electric. Like I had shivers all over from when we started chatting. Within about a day, I think we were finishing each other's sentences, and it kept going and going. It really was magical. And I actually said to a friend, I feel like I've been hit by this thunderbolt. I can't even explain it. And so I talk about all of this in my book, because it was actually, I was living through a lot of it as I was writing the book, which was just amazing. Wow. And we met like 4 days after we started chatting, and we both knew, and that was that. So
wow.
Yeah, really, really powerful. And we had that feeling of just like, Are you sure we haven't met before? It was like spooky, really spooky. So, and
Incredible.
he'd
So
done a
there
lot
you
of work as
go.
well. So yeah,
It is all
absolutely.
about being in the right feeling place, but
Mhm.
getting yourself in that doing the work.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Do the work.
Yeah,
That's just got there. I love that mantra. That's the mantra. Do the blooming work.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, do it.
What have you got to lose? It
I
costs
know.
nothing. Just get
Exactly,
the
that's
job
it.
done.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
what one
Mm.
thing can people do right now to see things in a more positive light?
If there's anything you can do, it's understand that right now, in this moment, you have, I like to say, you have a choice, and you can either choose to do that thing or not do that thing. What you need is just to take a moment and look at it. And I say take a moment a lot, but sometimes that's all you need. You just see something for what it is rather than for what you've been influenced to see it as. Does that make sense?
Because they can be two very different things, right?
Yeah, yeah. So rather than looking at something and just looking at it, you're actually seeing it for what it is. And in that moment, you can think, okay, I can keep looking at that in the same way, or I can just see it slightly differently. And by doing that, you're accepting that a lot more is actually possible. So try and just open your mind up a little bit.
Right. So that's really that's sort of almost going back to, I suppose, everything in life. That is, it's your perception. It's
Mm,
the glasses you have on, and that view. So really, what you're trying to encourage people there is to take the glasses off and just look at it as is, without the filter of your
experiencing it
perception of
or yeah.
creating a
Mhm,
story about
mhm.
what it is, and just see what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the
It
things that
sounds so simple though, doesn't it?
yeah,
But
it
so
is.
for a lot of people, they don't even know they're creating a story about what is.
Mm, no, that's it.
It's
And so, yeah, I have a Facebook community, which is my group is called Flip the Script, and that's what it's about. It's about just taking that moment to just change your story. Just change it.
love that. I've got my program used to be called Flip the Switch.
Oh
That's so
no,
freaky.
really? Wow. Amazing.
Nothing
I
like
love
that,
it.
completely
No.
different. That was
Uh-huh.
it was to do with diet and flip the switch.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
how funny that your actual
Yeah.
group was called Flip
Well,
the
that's
Switch.
just
It's called Flip the Switch.
somebody's been listening to us, haven't they?
That's
I
just
love that. I love that.
that's crazy. I mean, and it is. I just find the whole thing such a fascinating topic, because when people talk about speaking your truth, and you just
Mm,
think, yeah, but truth to one person,
mm.
that is their truth,
Yeah.
and then somebody else, it's different. It is all down. Everything is just down to perception
Mhm.
as to how you view your world. And if we could all, I mean, that is just such massive advice for anybody. If we could all just look at things as they are
Mm,
pre-perception, just look at
mm.
it as it is without
Hard
making
thing
your
to
mind
do.
up.
You have to train yourself a little
It
bit to
is,
try
isn't
and
it?
do it.
That's what I
Yeah.
mean. It's not easy. It
No.
sounds so simple
Mm.
because we all do it. But I think the more people, because I think, I probably did it automatically until I was introduced to it, and you
Mm.
realize what you're doing.
Mm.
So it's when people realize that that is what they're doing, they're
Mm.
just
Yeah.
creating a story about that thing that they're
Mhm.
thinking about. and just look at it. What a waste of it. We did not waste some energy.
Oh my God. I know. Yeah. And
what
you know,
a
when you
waste
think
of energy.
what more positive, productive things you could be doing with that energy that you've just spent on really nothing.
Yeah.
Quite honestly.
Yeah. And not probably not serving. Where does this all come from? Why do you think we do create? And quite often it's the more, why don't we naturally or condition to create the better outcome for it? Because it always tends to be you've created the worst case scenario of that thing.
It's like you've got that saying, haven't you? What is it? Prepare for the best, expect the worst. Is it that way around?
Yes, they say that and you think,
oh, wow, great.
Why? Again, a bit of a waste of energy, really.
Yeah. So why not just, think, well, this is what could happen. And if I just keep working towards that, well, okay. So if it doesn't go quite to plan, it doesn't go quite to plan. There was obviously
we'll deal with it when we get there.
Yeah. And just adapt.
Isn't it? It's just such a fascinating subject to me because you just think, what a waste of energy. Why don't we all train ourselves to expect the best? And if it doesn't turn out like that, we'll deal with it as it comes. And quite often it's never that bad, is it?
And probably I'd say 9 times out of 10, things don't go quite according to what you thought they would. That doesn't mean it's worse. It's just different.
Yeah, and not necessarily the worst case scenario, is it?
No, not at all. No.
It's so with the work that you do, so explain to people, to the listeners out there, exactly what it is you do, who you help, and then how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely, I would love to. So what I do is I have what I call a heartfelt approach. So my coaching is all about really helping people to just consider for a moment what they're feeling in terms of what they need. So my coaching work it's like having a cup of coffee with an old friend. I give them clear directions and a bit of guidance, but they also get accountability. But it's all done in such a way that they don't feel as though it doesn't feel like hard work. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So I love to help women who are just at that point where they're like, I understand that I need to do something now. I just didn't realize what it might look like. So then in a discovery call, we'll have a talk about, what their kind of most pressing things are at the moment and work out a way forward for them. So I have my website, which is jacquelinekent.co.uk. You've got all of the different ways you can get in contact with me on there. So you can follow me on social media. You can get my free lead magnet, which is called Who Am I Now? And that's available on there. I've also got my latest book, which is actually more of a self-help type book, which gives them so many different things that they can start looking at doing right now to make a change. And that here is called You've Got This. So, and that has got, so whoever you are now, whatever's driving you forward every day, we're going to figure out how we can work with that. And so there's my Facebook group, which is Flip the Script, and it's just a lovely little community in there. Really, really lovely, engaging conversations about taking the first steps to some kind of self-help or making a change for the better, for the future.
Fantastic. So with regards to your coaching, how do you work? Is it packages? Is it just as in what's
I
what's
find
the
that
move forward?
the most sustainable way of doing things is to work with somebody for 6 months, and it's effectively one session a month, but they get workbooks to go through. So there'll be one where they look at their boundaries, there'll be one where they look at what their beliefs are, depending on where they're at. And as we go through that time, you get kind of contact with me and stuff. So it's not like you have 1 hour a month and that's it, go away and get on with it. It's very much more that it opens your eyes to what it is that you could be looking at or seeing or thinking about, and then finding ways to make those sustainable changes, because that's what's so important. I think, I have done one-off sessions before, but you quite often find those people end up coming back again because one session doesn't
again,
not life-changing, is it?
Going back to that, instant gratification. Sorry, nothing's going to happen.
And that's the thing. It's, if somebody said to you, I can change your life in an hour, you're going to be like, yeah, okay, whatever.
No.
But the feedback that I get from my clients is, I actually can't believe I used to do things in the way that I did. How did I manage before this? And they realize now that because they are ready to do the work, they really do put in the hard graft and they reap the results. It's amazing. The rewards. It's just amazing.
And do you think a lot of that, again, going back to the way we are, as in previous to that, it's amazing what we put up with, right? But again, if you're on autopilot, you're just going through the motions and you're getting on. You might not be very happy, but maybe you're not even aware. I think some people do get to the point where they're not even aware that they actually could just simply be happy with.
Exactly. And that's
they're
it.
just so used to, like you said, what word do you use about being on a
treadmill?
You're just on a treadmill. You're going. So having that conversation with you is opening them up for something different, right? So and then when you are consciously creating change consistently enough, so then that becomes second nature, and then that's how their life change. And that is, I would totally agree that a one-off, it's not going to happen. It's
not the answer.
I'm sure they could a lot of change in one, but then build on it. It's like starting a car, get it going.
It is layers. It has to be done in layers. To do the one thing and then add another thing and then add another thing, rather than do the one thing and then wonder why that didn't work.
And then they'll get to the end and then they'll go, oh yeah, it happened overnight. Yeah, just something changed. You think, no, you've been doing the work for the last 6 months.
Exactly. I just, it fascinates me. My clients will be like, how will I ever repay you? I'm like, you did the work. And that's amazing. That's an amazing thing to hear. Just
how lovely. But don't underestimate yourself either. You're guiding them to there. Yes, it's going to be there. They've got to do the work, but that's what you're there to do. Fantastic. Well, what a great. I mean, did you ever? So, how long ago did you actually stop your wedding business? When did you actually put that all in?
That was probably around about April or May 2020. And strangely enough, I still have a couple of weddings left from that because of the whole postponement thing and all of that sort of stuff. But that was a turning point for me, because I was like, right, I have a choice now. I can either keep putting in more energy to this business that isn't, quite frankly, feeling like me anymore, or I can actually go for what feels right. So right from the age of probably about 7, people were always coming to me for advice. Even teachers at school would ask me, how could they handle a certain student who didn't like this teacher? How could I make them like this teacher? Crazy things, and when you actually look back, you're like, I was like the agony aunt from when I was about 12 at school. Everyone was just coming with me with their problems. I never understood why. Obviously now it makes total sense. And it's just always been that thing. But, the wealth of life experience that I've had from the age of 16. You know, I had a teen pregnancy. I lost my second son when I was 20. I had a child with a disability that was diagnosed when I was about 28. I had my relationship histories that I've had. I have lived the stuff, and that's the thing. You know, I've kept doing the work to get through those things, so I know what you can do, what choices you can make, how you can approach things maybe in a slightly different way to finally find yourself somewhere that actually you can be proud of, you know, because for years I wasn't proud of myself at all. I was just like, you're weak, you're pathetic, you're, you know, and that was just what I told myself, but because of what I was putting up with.
Right. As I said, it's amazing what we can put up with. And then, like you just said there, it's shocking how we can talk to ourselves. Would you ever have spoken to anybody like you said you were speaking to yourself back then?
No, I wouldn't dream of it. And that's another one of my things is, you know, talk to yourself as you would talk to your best friend. Be nice to yourself. Good grief.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, and that's a real thing, because I think, you know, people don't really pay attention to their self-talk.
No, because they don't give it the importance it actually needs, because who's listening? Who's listening to that self-talk?
Ultimately, that's your beliefs. That's what you know, one of the things I say is you're the only person that you're guaranteed to spend the rest of your life with. So why don't you just make more of that?
Very true. Very true. But again, you know, we've all done it. If we've all done it at some point or other, again, some people might have never even heard of it and thought, oh, yeah, I do that all the time. Again, it's awareness, isn't it? It really is. When I realised that I'd been doing that for a very long time. I didn't understand that was damaging, or that could have been causing some of the thing. Again, oh my goodness. Hello, yes, be kind. Not just to everybody else, actually be kind to yourself. Starts with you, right? And that's not being selfish. Well, it is being selfish, and there's nothing wrong with being selfish. Yeah, it is the same old, you know, you can't give from an empty cup. So give to yourself first, be kind to yourself. So to sum up, I suppose, today's talk, what would be your 3 top tips for somebody who's listening that possibly is going through this introspection? Maybe the kids are getting older, they don't know what to do with their lives. What would be your top 3 tips?
So probably the first one would be exactly the same advice that I was given, was look at how you can move yourself higher up that list. So you're at that point now and you have an option to do something. Make sure that it's something that supports you and what you need. Always try and see things, if you can, with the glass half full rather than half empty. And open your eyes to what's possible and take some action.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you so much for your time, Jacqueline. That was wonderful. Great advice to women out there. Yeah, come on. This is 50 is the new 30.
Yeah, let's do it.
Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Live the life that you want to live on your terms. Anybody out there, yes, please get in touch with Jacqueline. If you're watching it on YouTube or if you're listening to the podcast, all her information will be there below anyway. So thank you so much for your time and energy. And to everybody else, I will see you next week with a coffee with Karen. Thanks.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.